Hey, can everybody hear me? Yeah? No? No? Can you hear me back at the back?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning as part of your celebration of Earth Week in Chatham this week, where we're all honoring water. Water, the basis for our economy, our quality of life, and the health of our special and unique natural environment. So we thank the Chatham Orpheum and Christian for generously providing this wonderful space for special screening, the Saving Our Ponds videos, and for recording our discussion. So thank you, Christian. You'll also see someone, Kim Rodriguez, who is taking pictures as a photographer and is giving her time to Friends of Chatham Waterways. So thank you, Kim. I'm Natalie Coleman Fuller. I'm a board member of the Friends of Chatham Waterways. FCW is a local not-for-profit committed to the protection, wise use, and enjoyment of Chatham's fresh and salt waters and adjoining lands. We are supported by our members. So if you are not an FCW member, we encourage you to join. So for 25 years, FCW has organized and trained local volunteers as citizen scientists to collect water quality data in our coastal waters and ponds. This data, collected by our volunteers and local partners, has provided critical information used by our town to monitor the health of our ponds and waterways and to develop water infrastructure projects like installing sewers and managing road runoff. But even with these important town improvements, the data remain alarming, and our water is in deep trouble. So what can we do? Well, today, FCW is officially launching our Water Pledge campaign to educate citizens about what we can all do to preserve and improve our water quality. And in fact, the pledge goals work in concert with the Town of Chatham Select Board Water Management Objectives recently outlined in October. Through the Chatham Water Pledge, we aim to improve the health and quality of our fresh and salt water by raising public awareness to conserve water and reduce the use of fertilizer and pesticides that contribute to water pollution. The Chatham Water Pledge is to skip the fertilizer, avoid pesticides, conserve water, and grow a Cape-friendly lawn. Through these simple but powerful actions, you'll make a difference in protecting the quality and quantity of Chatham's waters. And by joining the community of pledgers, you'll help raise public awareness about the simple but positive actions we can all take on our own properties to protect Chatham's precious waters. Pledge forms are available at the table as you leave, and if you take the pledge, we welcome you to take a metal sign to post in your yard. I see a number of you people already have the signs, and we hope to see these signs popping up all over Chatham. On our website, we have a map, or keeping a map to document where the signs are popping up all over town. And we're looking for local partnerships that will help us spread the word. So if you're part of an organization that you would like more information, we have a media package to share. Please see me or one of the FCW board members here today. Okay, so now let's turn to our films. Today we're here to take a closer look at the challenges facing our ponds, our waterways, and our drinking water. And we'll hear the inspiring work being done to protect them. We'll begin with a short video presentation produced by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute and ushered in by Dr. Mindy Richland, who's here today. And then we'll move into a panel discussion featuring some of the Cape's most passionate and knowledgeable voices on water quality, conservation, and local stewardship. So the videos will show one after the other, they're short, and following the films, we will invite our panelists up to the front, and each panelist will have a few minutes to talk about their professional work with water, and then we'll have a time for questions from you all and a discussion. So please sit back and enjoy the Saving Our Pond series, and then we'll dive into the conversation. So let's dim the lights. So I now invite our panelists to come forward. Each of our panelists will start by telling us a little bit about themselves, their organization, and their water-related mission. And then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. If you can say your question loudly, and then we'll ask the panelists to please repeat the question, because we are, I'm sorry about that, we're recording this whole thing, so I just did the faux pas. So please, when you ask your question, the panelists will take the mic and repeat the question. So come on up. Rob Faley is the Chatham's Director of Public Works, overseeing critical infrastructure and collaborating across departments to help protect water quality and quantity and manage stormwater and wastewater. And then next is Kristen Andres. She's the Director of Education and Outreach at the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, where she works tirelessly to connect people with the importance of clean water and healthy ecosystems. And she's also the president of FCW. Susan Bauer is the energetic and creative force behind Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage, a grassroots group with a memorable name and a serious mission, cleaning up our waters, one pond and harbor at a time. And then, I went out of order, but Renee is next to Kristen, and she's the Chatham's Shellfish Constable. Renee is deeply involved in monitoring water quality, maintaining shellfish resources, and ensuring our aquatic environments remain productive and sustainable. So I'll just open it up and just go down the line. Rob, why don't you start? Just tell us about your work related to water quality.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Rob Faley. I'm the Director of Public Works here in Chatham. I'm responsible for well development and water quality in Chatham, as well as sewer expansion in Chatham. So, Chatham's only source of potable water is in the aquifer. So, one of the things that we really try to do is try to protect that. And, we're in our second month of a significant drought. So we look at conservation measures, we look at ways that we can conserve water. We're always dealing with treating our water because we have so many contaminants that work their way into the aquifer. And those are, microbial, inorganic, pesticides, herbicides, things of that nature. Some of the other PFAS, of course, is a growing concern, and we can't always treat that with chemicals. We do have a new treatment plant going in on Training Field Road now, about $18 million to treat water from 2 wells, and we have 11 wells. We're seeing PFAS starting to creep into all of our water systems slowly, but that's our biggest growing concern. I don't know what else to say. So one of the things I wanted to bring up specifically was we have about a little over 8,000 water customers in Chatham. Out of those, about 811 are registered users that have irrigation systems that they use treated potable water on their lawns to water the lawns, get nice green grass. We have pumped 475 million gallons of water last year in Chatham. 66 million gallons went to watering people's lawns. That's perfectly clean, treated water. To put that in perspective, that's Chatham's water usage for the entire town for the months of January, February, March, and April combined. And that's going on Chatham's lawns every year to have nice green lawns. And those are the wells those are the irrigation systems we know about. There are many others that are unregistered that we're still trying to find out. But it's all not bleak. We have a lot of great staff that is working on finding that and correcting that, and they have high-level licenses. And but that's it. I'll kick it off to Kristen now. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. So I work for the Association of Preserved Cape Cod. I'm the education director. For those of you who may not be familiar with APCC, we've been around since 1968. We're an environmental science-based advocacy organization. Feel like we've been the voice for the environment since 1968 when the Army Corps of Engineers wanted to dredge Nauset Marsh. And a group of people got together and said, that just sounds like a really bad idea. And they got other residents all riled up, and lo and behold, it didn't happen. And aren't we all glad it didn't? And those folks realized that there was a need for an organization that really looked out for the natural resources of Cape Cod, and particularly its water. We've been a water-centric organization because water is our lifeblood. So all of our initiatives that we engage in, such as working with communities across Cape Cod to improve stormwater through stormwater projects, we help them find funding. We sometimes manage the projects. We sometimes monitor before and after, which are usually requirements of the permits. We work on critical habitat restoration, improving water connections from ponds, our freshwater ponds, to the ocean, where we know our herring and other anadromous and catadromous fish need to make that journey so that they can continue their life cycles, such as our herring, which are just running now. We have citizen scientist programs where we engage the public in herring monitoring, which is going on right now through the middle of June. And we have our pond monitoring programs, as you saw in the films. We have a cyanobacteria program, monitoring program that we began several years ago, kind of realizing that cyanobacteria was becoming a global issue, and we wanted to get ahead of it. Also realizing that there's a nutrient issue in our saltwater embayments. Through the 208 planning in the region, we hadn't really been looking at our freshwater ponds. So we wanted to bring our freshwater ponds forward. And so thanks to this wonderful series that Mindy and her staff put together, I think it really highlights the value of our freshwater ponds. And then I guess one of our other initiatives, which is kind of what I usually speak about, is our native landscape initiative, which is encouraging folks to do what we're asking in this FCW water pledge, which is to skip the fertilizers and the pesticides and be more cognizant about our water usage, because it is one aquifer and we need to protect our important water resource. And also as part of that landscape initiative and natural landscape initiative, we're really supporting our pollinators and larger ecosystem. So while I could go on forever, I guess I'll stop there.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Renee Gagne. I'm the shellfish constable for the town. I've been the shellfish constable for the last 14 years. And prior to that, I was a commercial shellfishman for the last 25 years. So I've had a lot of experience on the water. And of course, shellfish is a really important part of my life and part of Chatham's life. Water quality is a huge issue. Of course, shellfish are filter feeders, so they do help clean the water. But most of our concern and some of the things that we've seen over the last, what I've certainly visually seen over the last 40 years, is the conditions of our sediment. And all of that is a cause of a lot of nitrogen loading. And one of the greatest examples is right here in our backyard on Oyster Pond. 40 years ago, you were able to see 40 long rake shellfishmen fishing there in the wintertime, and also folks harvesting bay scallops. And all of that area now are dead zones. And you saw all the freshwater examples of algae. Well, when all that algae dies, it goes somewhere. It goes down into the bottom and it starts to accumulate. And those accumulations cause dead zones. Now, shellfish are pretty hardy, but what they can't live without oxygen. And so we've seen a lot of those deep water, saltwater estuaries really regress as far as their sediment because of these issues. And so it's a real concern for us. If you take a look at Oyster Pond right now, you'll see a bunch of little buoys, and that's all next year's oysters that we have sunk in cages. And we go and take sediment tests before we sink those oysters, because if we sink them just a little over that line into that mucky muck, it's not mud, it's muck, then all those shellfish die. So that part of it is a very big concern of us. to us. Now, we've seen, I think, in Mill Pond, some of the water conditions as far as dissolved oxygen actually get better over the years. In the last couple of years, we've seen just a little bit, so there is some hope on the horizon that with soaring and with people acknowledging and recognizing that adding fertilizer to your lawns is, especially around our beautiful estuaries, are contributing to some of these dead zones, that there is hope. It's not all a pessimistic outlook. As far as pesticides, they're certainly more insidious. We can't see an actual cause and effect, but I do want to remind people that shellfish are filter feeders, and what you see on the labels of those pesticides are going into our estuaries and are being uptaken by the shellfish. I don't want to discourage anybody from eating shellfish, because there's something you can do about it, and that's stop putting pesticides down.
Good morning. The Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage was started in Chatham in 2018. I had apprenticed myself to turtles for about 18 years because I lived in Chatham in the early 2000s, and I swam with turtles, and it was the turtles that really showed me that nature is not just a collection of wonderful, marvelous, fascinating things that I could use and entertain myself with. They were actually beings, individuals that I could relate to. And so after I had swum in enough ponds so that whenever I would swim, the turtles would come up to me and I would recognize them and they would recognize me. Sometimes before I recognized them, that was embarrassing. And then in my passionate way, I decided that I would help turtles. And that was what I was going to do. I wanted to be a turtle. I was going to help turtles. And so I went to various towns and I said, you know, here is some models of charming signs that will tell people to leave half the ponds for turtles. Don't let your dog go beyond this point. Don't make new beaches. Stay away. Just use your part. Big tree falls into a pond, leave it. It's a nursery. It's a protection. It's low-cost housing. It's wonderful. And that failed. They said, "Oh, lady, lady, we have enough on our hands to deal with, and we can't possibly do that. Besides, it's too political. Nobody pays any attention." So I tried writing Turtle Sisters books, and I was going to educate 1,000 school students, and they were going to be the next generation. And every single one of them said, "Did you bring live turtles for us to hold? Can I squeeze a frog?" I said, "No, you can't squeeze a frog. That's the wrong attitude." And I realized it was getting nowhere. And one day I was swimming around Goose Pond, and I saw the usual beer can and the usual, actually there's a washing machine there, the usual things that are there. Bikini bottom, how does that happen? There was a bowling ball in another pond. How did that happen? Somebody dodging it. And I thought, well, the least I can do is clean up this stuff, especially if I see a gallon of turpentine or spent fireworks leaking perchlorates, a car battery. That's the very least I can do. So I grabbed two people, asked a stranger who was in a kayak, if he was doing anything, stuck a plastic bag between his legs and said, "Come on, let's go." Oh, it was, we collected a bushel of trash and we thought we were hot stuff. And somebody said, "We're a bunch of old ladies against underwater garbage." And the name stuck. And then when a couple of other people joined in 2020 during the pandemic, we took off. And now we are 30 women strong, age 65 to 85. I'm the 85. The tryouts, you swim a half a mile under 30 minutes, and then you complete the rest of the mile, because the only real safety measure that we have, and we've got a lot of safety measures, but the big one is that we're all excellent swimmers. And we clean up about 15 to 20 ponds every summer, and we scout another 15 to 20 for the next summer. Because although garbage is bad, we love garbage. We are unhappy when we find a pond that has no garbage, because that's, nothing for us to do. And it's not a treasure hunt, but we find the ponds that need cleaning up. And then in teams of 3, 1 kayak and 2 swimmers, we go out and swimmers go down and pick up the garbage. and give them to the kayak. And you saw in the film what we can bring back several 100 pounds of trash from a single pond. And there's almost nothing that 3 women can't do. So if it's a truck tire with a rim still on it, that might take 4, but we can go down and we can get that. And what you may ask, does this have to do with water quality? Probably not much. A lot of the stuff that we take out of the ponds isn't really hurting anything. Glass is pretty inert. Budweiser light cans, they are amazing how long they can last, but they do break down, and so do tires. But we do a whole lot of things. We inspire women and men of a certain age to keep active. We promote adventure. We really re-energize the pond associations and homeowners associations that we work with. But the big thing we do is to use a completely different motivation to power our environmental service. I've been interviewed by 40 and 50 different organizations around the world talking about the Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. And I always switch it back to them. And I say, you've talked with hundreds. What motivates them? If we're in the United States, it's a kind of righteousness, a kind of need to have purpose and do something good. If it's abroad, it's fear and guilt. They take climate change much more seriously than we do. We are not motivated by any of those. We are motivated by joy. Something happens when you put a bunch of old ladies in a pond and subject them to not only trash, but we see snapping turtles. We see 6-pound bass with maybe 1 or even 2 hooks coming out of their jaw. We surface among water lilies and realize that they're humming with honeybees. We never know what we're going to see. We never know what we're going to feel. And after you do that enough times, I can watch these women, one after another, drink the Kool-Aid. They come out of the pond and they've been in there just long enough, they've done it just long enough, where they come out and they say, this is what I want to do. This is great. And you can see, it's as if they turn a page. I am starting a new chapter. My new life begins now. Who can say that? What other group does that for a group of people in their 70s? And we have people who go into water cleanup. We go into people who are taking the pledge. We really create a group of activists. We don't start that way, but we create this huge amount of activism. We are now beginning to spin off new chapters because we have so many people on the waiting list. As Margaret Mead says, there is no power in the world like the zest of a postmenopausal woman. And we are harnessing that zest to help water quality across the nation.
Susan, what can the average person do to help? How can we help them drink the Kool-Aid?
I was once with Paula Poundstone, the great comedian, and she said, don't you want kids to come to the pond and get to know nature? And out of my mouth came, no, lock them in a room with a video, keep them away from the pond. Yeah, that didn't make me a good person. But, what I really like is to leave half the pond. I've been swimming in ponds in the Chatham area for 25 years. And where there was once one beach the size of this stage, now there are 15, and they go halfway around the pond. I know that you can't have baby turtles and baby fish if there's only sand. You can only have it in that mat of weed that is in 6 inches of water, 12 inches of water. Don't run your dog on the weed. Well, I don't want to disturb the people on the beach. Oh, disturb the people on the beach. Don't let your... And there are Chatham ponds that have become dog walking places. If I could wave a magic wand, I would just have every person fall in love with some piece of the natural world, because all you have to do is fall in love with one, and then you understand that we all are individuals. We all thrive or fail together. And we just have to treat everything, including ponds, especially ponds, like a magician that you are in awe of and that you just want them to continue. That's not scientific, is it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Renee, how important is it to continue sewering in our town?
I think Chatham has been very fortunate that we were the leaders at creating a comprehensive wastewater management program, and I think it's extremely important. As I said, I think that some of the results that we're seeing, some of the positives can only be from sewering, because there certainly hasn't been a lack of green lawns. But I think it's very important. We're surrounded by water, and our economy is based on water, whether it's for the tourists that come here, but also for the people that have historic and cultural livelihoods, like shellfishermen and fishermen. So making sure that our waters are protected is certainly paramount.
Thank you. Kristen, APCC releases an annual State of the Waters report. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. I think we're in our either fourth or fifth annual report. It's called State of the Report, the State of the Waters Report, Cape Cod. And we accumulate all of the water quality data that has been collected by other organizations, and we do an assessment, and we produce it into a website, and there's a handout on the table out as you leave that tries to illustrate what's happening with water quality. If you've ever looked at a water quality spreadsheet, unless you're like a scientist who gobbles up data, it's mind-numbing. So by doing the State of the Waters report and giving an assessment, we try to make it more digestible to folks. We have maps that indicate that our water quality data, the water quality data shows that 90% of our coastal embayments are impaired. They don't meet the water quality standards. The vast majority of those are on the south-facing Nantucket Sound side, mostly because of the higher development and the lack of flushing. There are, with the exception of way towards the Buzzards Bay area. And of the 890 ponds, we only have water quality data for about 130 or maybe less. And a third of those are showing impacts of degradation. So our water quality data assessment is an effort to inform folks that we need to take action, and one of the ways is to take the pledge, these important steps here. The other is for communities to keep moving towards addressing their wastewater through sewering and some alternative systems. But basically, sewering is the thing that's going to really make the biggest impact on removing the nitrogen and other issues in our wastewater.
Thank you. Rob, can you tell us about what's the quality of our tap water here in Chatham, and also what's the status of the sewering hookup in town?
Sure. So water quality in Chatham is very high quality water. We test it monthly. All the wells, all 11 wells, as they're pumping. Most of our wells are non-detect for PFAS. We do have a couple that it's starting to creep into the area. I know like places like Hyannis have been dealing with it for a dozen years or more, and they have treatment in every single one of their wells. We don't have to treat all of our wells just yet, but we're getting there. We also have to worry, we have a high level of iron and manganese in Chatham, so we do treat for that. We keep it from oxidizing, and we also have green sand filters in some of our treatment plants. As far as sewer, the plan continues. We've been at it for quite close to 15 years now. A new water pollution control facility back around 2011, and it was meant to be a 30-year plan originally. We unfortunately, because of not just developing new sewer, but, you know, our original sewer is 50 years old. So we have to redevelop some of the pump stations and some of the other infrastructure that we have to go along with expanding the sewer. So we're still about another 30 years away from sewering the entire town. But we are actively working on it. We have 4 active construction projects we're in right now for sewer, and we're developing at town meeting. We'll be asking for $32 million to develop that next phase of sewer. So we are actively working on it, and it's something that, you know, it'll be Chatham's legacy, because really we were at the forefront of developing sewer on Cape Cod, and I'm proud to have inherited that. But it was all thanks to the great work of all the Chatham residents.
Really important. Let's switch to water quantity. We've talked about water quality. Let's talk about water quantity. I'm going to stick with Rob about how much water does the town pump annually, and do we know? I guess we sort of already touched on this a little bit, but we know where the majority of the water goes, and also there's a seasonal aspect too.
Sure. The highest use months are like the tail end of June, July, and August, and even into the beginning of September. Again, last year we pumped 475 million gallons, which is a lot of water. Our busiest summer day, we may pump about 4 million gallons. We are permitted to pump as much as 8.5 million gallons per day from the aquifer, but we don't even have the infrastructure to support quantities that high. Again, I think I mentioned that 66 million gallons a year goes on Chatham's lawns. Again, I think it's probably much higher. It's probably closer to 80 or 90 million gallons once we find out all the people that are illegally doing so. But it's a real concern, and it puts a tremendous strain on our infrastructure to pump that kind of water.
So, Kristen, water conservation is an important aspect. In our own landscapes on our own properties, what are some ways that we can conserve water?
Well, one of the, just going off of what Rob has mentioned, the easiest thing is to go with a Cape Cod lawn. I speak to people about this all the time. I've been here for many decades on Cape Cod. I'm a wash ashore, like probably most people in the audience. I learned when I first got here what a Cape Cod lawn was. It was that rough lawn that you just mowed when you had to. Maybe there's bearberry in it. Maybe there's low bush blueberry, little blue-eyed grass. Having been a conservation agent in Chatham for many years, I saw some wonderful Cape Cod lawns, and I would have to tell the new homeowner, oh gosh, did you notice this little blue-eyed grass? Like, that's a really wonderful native plant. And, you know, so please don't use herbicides. So Cape Cod lawns have always just been a rough lawn. People used to vacation here and took it easy. Like, they didn't care about maintaining a yard in the way that the suburbanites and the industry has sort of trained us to have these lush turf lawns. So that's the foremost thing that we could do, is all convert to Cape Cod lawns, which are not irrigated. So that's the easiest thing to do. And they go dormant in the summer. And, you know, my little joke is that, you know, I used to hear old Cape Codders brag about the last time I mowed the lawn was June 15th, and I didn't have to touch the mower until September. So, you know, we should all aspire to that and enjoy our summers. The other way to conserve water is to have our landscapes planted with native plants that are appropriate for the location. A lot of our native plant species, like perennials, shrubs, and trees, are really drought tolerant and salt spray tolerant. So they don't need to have that constant watering like like the beloved hydrangeas are really water hogs, because they come from China and they're used to growing in very damp and moist, you know, environments. So our native plants that are appropriate for our soils and environment are a great way to save water. You can also harvest water through rain barrels. It's a great practice that we are allowed to do here in the East. So very easy to get a rain barrel that goes under your gutter downspout, and you can use that water to water your flower pots, or wash off your boots, or rinse out your compost bucket, or, you know, water whatever you'd like. So that's just another great tip to do that.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to the audience to see if there's any questions. We also have the director of these films, Dr. Richland, is here too. So if you have questions for her, please say your question in the back.
Hi. Two-part question with regard to usage and pollution. One, if there's a small percentage of residents that are using an exorbitant amount of water, is there a surcharge or a tax on those people? Because they should pay for what they're using and they should pay that premium. And then secondly, with regard to pollution, single-use plastic, litter, stuff that gets in our ponds, the Falmouth Water Stewards did amazing work leveraging CPA funding for water refill station infrastructure across the town. Do we have an opportunity to do that in Chatham?
Rob, that sounds like your question. Can you?
Sure.
Repeat?
So I can address the water rates. They're scaled. So the less amount of water that you use, you're charged a lower rate. As your increased usage goes up, you charge a higher rate. Irrigation is charged the highest of all the rates. We recently are just undergoing a comprehensive study on water usage and water rates, and water rates will be climbing here in the near future. Sorry, spoiler alert for everybody, but we're looking at a substantial increase just to support the infrastructure. Hopefully, what that does is force people to conserve water even more.
You should
I can do
just charge
that.
them
You
more.
can do the other one?
Yeah, I'm on the board of the Falmouth Water Stewards, and it's Alan Robinson who almost single-handedly got all those water refill stations all over town, and now they're going to go into every one of the beaches. And we did it really very, very cheaply, and then he made a map that goes to tourists, and so that here's where you can refill your water bottles. It really is something that is essential to do if you're going to ban single-use water bottles. We had that timed. The other thing that Litter Free Falmouth does is to collect litter. We haven't started it underwater yet, but we're starting. They collect it along a measured amount of highway, and then they analyze it, and then they can go to the Board of Selectmen and say, look, we've got a problem with NIPS, and so we have been able to ban NIPS. And we see the results underwater of what we used to find a whole lot of single-use water bottles, and now not so much.
Yes, in the back.
Hi, I'm curious. We've had our house for about 50 years. It's a 70-year-old Cape in a very, very beautiful, lots of rebuilds neighborhood on Crow's Pond. I walk around. I moved out full-time in 2016, take care of our elderly dad. I live here now. I walk around in rainstorms and I see sprinkler systems going. When we comply 100%, we do all natural, no sprinkler system, but I see, during droughts, every year, sprinkler systems going. And, of course, I don't want to be the water police. I live in this neighborhood. We know a lot of families, but I'm curious. I never, ever see anybody driving around and monitoring it. And I hesitate to call, and rat out my neighbors. But it just, these are largely very wealthy people. And maybe the fine is so low that it's just like a slap on the hand, but I'm wondering, what do we do in situations like that? It really ticks me off.
Yeah, I would like to answer that one. What do we do to, if our neighbors are using their sprinklers in the rainstorms and, having these really green lawns? I think education. And one way that you can educate your neighbors is to have these signs to pledge your water pledge of, skip the fertilizer, avoid pesticides, grow a Cape-friendly lawn, conserve water. And the more that we have popping up, I think it will move the needle. It will become really passé to have one of these fluorescent lawns. It'll be gauche, it's like keep that on the other side of the bridge. And I just feel like if we can just educate our neighbors, they don't know they're doing something kind of wrong. They just don't know it. Anybody else want to talk about the fines or anything?
So there are no fines unless we're in a declared drought. So I have a select board meeting coming up next week where we are in a kind of a drought emergency. We're in a level 2 significant drought. So hopefully they take the recommendations and they put some kind of a restriction on the number of times people are watering their lawns, and there will be fines associated with that. It's the staff, it's the resources to go out look,
Yes.
show up to work early in the morning and drive around, trying to differentiate the people who may have a private well and people who are on town irrigation. And, just a lot of legwork, but we're committed. We want to try to resolve some of these issues.
But can I have a follow-up on that, just to push back, because a private well is still coming off the same aquifer.
Right.
So it's really not, like, oh, well, they're doing something better. They're not.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's been a lot of discussion about phosphorus. There hasn't been a discussion about gas. Is there any monitoring of that? In terms of your
Maybe I can take this. There's definitely a lot of oversight on the water, along with the harbor master's office and the shellfish department. We have boats on the water, and whenever we see a slip or whatever, we certainly notify the harbor master, and there is a function in place on what to deal with it. We don't really see that much. There's gassing at certain landings at Old Mill Boatyard and at the fish pier, and those are the two main places you can find actual gas trucks fueling. So those are very monitored. You have the harbor master's office is right there, and the wharfinger over at the fish pier. But there is a fuel and monitoring spill in place if such an event.
So is there any? I know there.
That I don't know. I know that most of the people within my parameters use outboard motors, and they're also dealing with a marginalized annual income, and so a lot of that new technology comes at a big price. That's all I can say. I don't know anyone who has.
Michelle?
Yes, hi. Thanks, everyone. By the way, it's really my question, we know that sewering is probably. I'm sorry, 30 years just same. Is there anything we can do? We're in a climate change. Like, how do we accelerate the sewering?
Our biggest challenge has been finding adequate land to house pump stations. People don't want them in front of their house or in their neighborhood, and they have generators that run if there's a power outage, and they test weekly. We try to disguise them, make them look like a little beach shack or a small garage, or even a lot of them would put most of the infrastructure underground where there's no flooding concerns. We still have to have the generator above ground. That's been our biggest challenge. People came to us and said, I live in a low-lying area where we could install gravity sewer, and I've got land you could put a pump station on. It would make our jobs a lot easier.
Should we advertise that in some way?
Yeah, so we are looking at possibly purchasing land ahead of time so we can kind of accelerate the process. I can't speak for the past. I can only project for the future.
Janet?
Yeah, thank you. Just following up on that for you. So the original scheduling of the phasing of the expansion of the sewer system was done, as I understood it, based on the need for protecting the receiving waters, which were largely the estuaries, which were suffering. But that was done a long time ago. So two questions. One is the information regarding the scheduling and the phases publicly available on the website so people can see when different areas are scheduled to be sewered? And secondly, has there been any reconsideration of the priority now that we're knowing more and more about the need to protect the ponds from phosphorus? Is there any consideration being given to maybe accelerate that expansion of the sewer to protect the ponds as opposed to some of the marine?
So we have like a 5-6 year look ahead. It's so hard to come up with like a 30-year plan and say we're going to focus on these areas because so many variables change. You know, we may, again, a pump station, we may have an idea we're going to install one in this area, and we run up against problems with property owners, or we can't, can't site one there. So we have to reshift and focus on another area. Excuse me. But we do have a 5 to 6 year look ahead. We are refocusing our efforts towards Pleasant Bay. We're getting pressure from reducing nitrogen in the Pleasant Bay area. So after we do our next couple of projects that are going to be in the Oyster Pond location, because that was something that we had started years ago, but we want to finish the nitrogen reduction in Oyster Pond. And then we're going to focus on Pleasant Bay for a couple of years, I think 4 years, with some larger pump stations there. And some of those areas surrounding neighborhoods could pump to those pump stations as well. So these are critical pump stations that we want to focus on in the Pleasant Bay area. And then we're going to kind of redistribute and see where our highest need is next after that.
Michelle?
While you're talking about Pleasant Bay and nitrogen, has anyone taken a look at the effects of East Berthoud Country Club Golf Course, which it's a huge land mass right along Pleasant Bay, and I drive past there. I'm on Crest Pond. I drive past it and actually take down hundreds of trees and fertilize. And are they doing anything ecologically sensitive? Do we look at the impacts of all that fertilizer on Pleasant Bay?
I don't know if I'm
Kristen, would you be?
I don't have an answer. I think that I think the answer you would get from the course is that they use what's minimally needed to make their golf course function the way their members want it to look. So other than that, I don't know what else to say. I am dismayed. I've also noticed that a lot more trees have come down. That seems to be a practice or an interest of the club in removing all the trees so that the air circulation is good across the greens. I think that's the reason. And that, I hope that's kind of a shame,
Well, one
but-
thing when we were looking at this data, we actually noticed that it's 67% of the pesticide and fertilizer use is actually residential. And so, we collectively have a part. And so we were surprised that the golf courses were actually in the minority, amazingly. Obviously an issue, but we also are the issue.
I have a septic system I just installed, and
But it really all depends on, how many people in your household, I mean, it's probably a health department question, but, I'd say in the 3 to 5 year range would be average.
You say we're in a drought right now, and you're going to be going before the select board to make a decision as to conservation. 4 towns get their water from the Monomoy lens. And shouldn't it be 4 towns making that decision at the same time instead of just one town making it and some other town just using the water as they please? And is that something that has been done in the past, or is it considered?
So I know the town of Harwich and Orleans both have recently enacted water restrictions. They go into effect May 1st. They're allowed to water 2 times a week, and they pick some specific days that odd number houses and even number houses would be able to water their lawns. And, they have recent state withdrawal permits where they we all of Cape Cod towns that withdraw from the aquifer have a withdrawal permit from Mass DEP. They recently went through that. Typically, they're cutting what they're permitted for in half. So, like in Chatham's case, we are allowed to pull like 8.7 million gallons per day. When we renew our permit, that'll be cut down to just over 4 million gallons per day. So we've been looking at conservation even more closely because we need to reduce the amount of water. Again, in a really busy summer day, we're using about 4 million a day, so we should be under that anyway, but it's just putting a good eye towards conservation. But what I'd be asking the select board is to kind of at least match what the surrounding towns are doing as well.
Yes.
How close are you to getting the new treatment facility
So it's currently slightly ahead of schedule. It won't be online for this summer, but it will be for next summer. So we're going to complete it sometime over the winter this year.
Hi. First of all, thank you all for putting this on. It's really educational. And able to enjoy this conversation. Not to make it personal, but we live on School Street, and you know, it would be difficult for me to say that I see any improvement. I certainly see complete degradation in the little mill. Often try to raise fish, and they're up in there. It's it seems to me that when the sewer was run down Main Street, it's insane not to finish that project and go up School Street and down Ivy Lane, where you have a significant number of contributors to the degradation of the pond. And it's dismaying to me that learned, we're going to focus on Pleasant Bay now, and I can only see that getting worse. I see a lot of focus on Oyster Pond, but I don't see a lot of focus on Little Mill Pond. And, the fact that Little Mill Pond is right, behind Main Street, and all the, wonderful stores and everything there, that should be a focus to me, so that people can enjoy that. Right now, it's absolutely disgusting. I don't know who that question is for, but if you can comment. How do we complete, the mill pond before we go on to somewhere else?
So I not to address that specifically because I don't know all the details, but I know like the sewer on Main Street is an 8-inch sewer line, and I'm not sure if it can handle the capacity without rehabbing the trunk line, increasing the size of the trunk line to add that additional flow from those other areas. I know like the Mill Pond Pump Station and that part of the downtown has already been sewered, back in the late 60s. We have to look at tying in all those other communities, all those other neighborhoods into the main trunk line. I don't have a specific answer for you right now, though. Something we'll keep in mind, though, absolutely.
So I'm wondering, neighborhoods, to sewer.
Good suggestion. Good suggestion.
That's great to hear. And we're also at town meeting this year. There's an article for a sewer assistance program that's town supplemented. So there'll be some additional funding available for residents.
I was curious when we have that whole statewide.
I'd like to just reiterate what Gail is speaking of in case not everybody heard. The county has a fund, an aqua fund it's called, and it provides 0 to low interest loans depending on your need, your circumstances, for either septic upgrades or sewer hookups. So it's a great opportunity, and yes, there'll be an article for Chatham voters to vote on to provide some additional dollars towards that sort of.
Yes, right there.
With the expansion of a lot of swimming pools in the area, not my little street, but we have 8 new pools just within what you might consider a 2-block area. What is the thought on that in terms of the water? What impact does that have or doesn't it?
Well, swimming pools aren't allowed to use town water to fill swimming pools. You know, it's in our water rules and regulations. So that water has to be trucked in from another location.
But off Cape, you mean, or?
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from. Yeah. It doesn't come from Chatham, though.
Interesting.
I have a question for Dr. Rishkin. What are your other plans for these wonderful videos?
So we are, so we're planning to continue this as a living series, and we're going to be continuing to add videos. Last year, we worked on 3 additional videos, and Kristen was involved in one of them, and it's tentatively entitled Landscaping for Clean Water. And so this is basically geared towards providing information to homeowners about how they can manage their property. There's another video that's focused on indigenous perspectives to the Cape and to water quality. And so these have been something that we definitely want to keep going as topics are suggested to us. We definitely want to be responsive to community priorities and perspectives, and that's how a number of these topics initially came about. We've thus far have been focused on Cape Cod, but one of our next videos will be about the MV Cyano program, some of the HAB problems that they have out on Martha's Vineyard. So I would definitely say, I'll be in communication with Kristen and trying to kind of get these videos out as they're released, and please feel free to share the playlist that's on YouTube with neighbors, friends, and family. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions. Get in touch with me. I think I'm the only Mindy at Hui, so if you go to our website and type my name in, my email address will probably pop up. And I just wanted to mention that this is all part of a Center for Oceans and Human Health program.
Any other questions? Or yep, there's one more.
Some towns are attempting to deal with that. Their thought is that you would create more of an issue if you actually dredge that out. I believe that there are some programs that are trying to put mulch, a lot of shell in some of those mayonnaise bottoms to help kind of firm things up. But until you stop the input, there's no sense on working on the cure. Because it's just going to happen over and over again. So there may be ways of dealing with that once that input is notified. But I think they're still working on those types of cures.
Okay, that's one last question here.
Our great find was an 80-pound toilet with a eel in it in John's Pond. It was raining and the wind was blowing. Sorry, it was a horrible day, but we knew it was there because we scout every pond we do. And so we knew it was there, and we had an ocean kayak and a lasso. And so when we found the toilet finally at the end of this dive, very poor water quality. It was about 3 inches down in the mayonnaise, in the muck, and we couldn't move it. But we were so determined that we snaked this lasso around the tank. Finally got it lassoed, and then we handed it to the kayaker, and she pulled, and we all hung on to the other side of her kayak so that she would not tip over. And once she got it about a foot above the 2 feet above the pond floor, I shouted, "Kick!" and everybody simply kicked this thing into relatively shallow water. And then we lifted it up, and it made the front page of the Boston Globe, and was voted the best photo of the year. And then we got it on the ocean kayak and brought it. But yes, our hardest thing is things like 12-foot docks and stuff like that, and sometimes we have to raft out 2 kayaks. But we're ingenious. Thank you for the question.
Where there's a will, there's a way, huh?
Yes.
Well, thank you again to all of you for coming, and thank you to the Orpheum and to our photographer, Kim Rodriguez, and especially to our panelists, Rob Faley, Kristen Andres, Renee Gagné, and Susan Bauer. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you all for your insights and your work on behalf of our local waters. It's clear that protecting our water quality is a shared effort and involving science, policy, passion, and public support. And I'd like to bring home one overriding point: conservation and preservation of our coastal waters, ponds, and drinking water is about individual action. You can make a difference. So please join Friends of Chatham Waterways and take the Chatham Water Pledge. You can sign up in the lobby. Thanks for coming, and enjoy Earth Week.